At the Sterling Group's annual celebration dinner, Victoria, in an attempt to curry favor with her tycoon lover, publicly announced that she was kicking me, her husband who lives off her charity, out of the house. The next second, however, I, as the de facto controlling shareholder holding absolute power in the company, walked onto the stage and coldly ordered security to throw the arrogant couple out the door, and immediately announced Victoria's removal from her position as CEO. Come to my channel. If you love the story, don't forget to subscribe. The autumn night on Manhattan's Upper East Side was chilly, the air thick with the mingled scents of expensive perfumes and cigar tobacco. At the Metropolitan Museum of Art's charity gala, elegantly dressed and surrounded by flashing cameras, countless celebrities and dignitaries chatted and laughed under the crystal chandeliers. Sips of champagne. I stood in the shadows of a corner of the ballroom, wearing a well-tailored but 3-year-old suit, looking utterly out of place among the elites around me, whose bespoke suits cost tens of thousands of dollars. My gaze was fixed on the person in the center of the crowd, my wife, Victoria Sterling. 6 months ago, I experienced a deeply painful betrayal. My ex-girlfriend, with whom I had been dating for 3 years, looked down on me because I was just an ordinary project manager with a fixed salary. She colluded with company executives to abscond with all my savings and kicked me out. Just when I was at my lowest point and completely despairing of relationships, Victoria entered my world like a high and mighty ice queen. She admired my talent, affirmed my abilities, and even defied her family's objections to marry me. Everyone said I had incredibly good luck, that a nobody could marry the heiress of the Sterling Group. I also thought I was the luckiest man in the world, willing to go behind the scenes for this redemption, managing the shady business dealings for her. However, tonight's dinner has shattered my self-comforting illusions of the past few days. Power and wealth are the most potent corrosive agents in the world. With Victoria's smooth ascension to the CEO position at Sterling Group, her influence at home underwent a qualitative change. The initial warmth had vanished, replaced by indifference, criticism, and condescending scrutiny. She began frequently staying out late, citing business engagements, and always smelled of a strange man's cologne. And I, to maintain this outwardly glamorous family, chose to endure and tolerate, naively believing that as long as I was considerate enough, I could warm this icy heart. Tonight's dinner was supposed to be a highlight for her as CEO, and she made an exception by bringing me, her husband. I had hoped this might be an opportunity for us to mend our relationship. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight. The blonde presenter on stage held a microphone, her voice amplified through the surround sound system, filling the entire hall. A spotlight instantly shone on Victoria, who stood in the center. Today, she wore a silver, backless gown handcrafted by a Parisian haute couture atelier. Her elegant updo accentuated her long, swan-like neck, and her cool, beautiful face wore a perfectly professional smile. Standing there, she resembled a regal queen, radiating an undeniable and powerful aura. The host smiled and posed a few pre-prepared interactive questions, to which the guests responded with soft chuckles. Ms. Victoria, everyone knows that you are the youngest and most decisive leader of the Sterling Group in recent years. The outside world praises your business skills, but everyone is also curious about which outstanding man can win the heart of this ice queen of the business world and become your ideal husband. The moment the question was posed, all eyes were immediately on Victoria. A chorus of jeers and mocking laughter erupted from the audience. Those in high society always have a keen interest in the private lives of successful women. I stood in the corner, subconsciously taking half a step forward. Although we had been sleeping in separate rooms for 3 months, in this public setting, as her legal husband, I should be the standard answer she gave. Even if it was just to maintain a public image, she should mention my name. The image of my ex-girlfriend betraying me 6 months ago was still vivid in my mind. I thought Victoria was different. I thought she would at least consider our marital status. However, Victoria's smile froze slightly for a moment. She didn't answer immediately, but turned her head and looked at the stairwell not far away beside her. Standing there was a young man in a custom-made Bryony suit. He held a glass of champagne, a playful yet arrogant smile playing on his lips. I recognized him, Blake Morton, the legal heir to Morton Capital, and a frequent visitor to Victoria's private office in recent months. Rumors had been circulating on Wall Street for some time that Blake was orchestrating Sterling Group's recent series of large-scale acquisitions, and that his relationship with Victoria had long surpassed that of ordinary business partners. The moment I saw Blake appear, my heart sank, and a terrible premonition washed over me. Victoria took a deep breath, as if she had unloaded some burden. She didn't glance in my direction even once, but instead, in front of hundreds of Manhattan celebrities, gracefully walked towards the stairs in her high heels. She reached out and took Blake's arm. Blake raised an eyebrow, a smug glint in his eyes, and pulled her closer to him. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, the two acted like a couple deeply in love. A murmur of surprise rippled through the audience. Everyone knew that Blake Morton wasn't Victoria's legal husband, and that I, Cole Garrett, standing in the corner, was legally Mr. Sterling. This blatant infidelity was like a public slap in the face. My ex-girlfriend's betrayal was like a wound, and Victoria's actions were like rubbing salt into it. The host was clearly not prepared for this turn of events. His hand holding the microphone stiffened slightly, and he put on an awkward but polite smile, trying to smooth things over. It seems that Ms. Sterling's ideal candidate has a very strong industry background. Victoria took the spare microphone from the host, her gaze finally sweeping across the audience before landing precisely on me in the corner. There was no remorse in her eyes, only cold indifference and undisguised disgust. About my ideal husband. Victoria's voice came through the microphone clearly to everyone's ears. Crisp and cruel. He must not only be able to fight alongside me in business strategy, but also have a family background that matches the size of the Sterling Group, rather than a parasite who just hides at home and lives off his wife's charity. These words caused an uproar. Countless gazes, filled with schadenfreude, contempt, and mockery, were instantly cast upon me from all directions. My God, isn't that Cole? I heard he's been living off Victoria since he went bankrupt a few years ago. A gigolo dares to compare himself to Master Blake? Victoria should have dumped him long ago. How shameful. If I were him, I'd crawl into a hole and disappear. The whispers around me pierced my ears like a dense barrage of needles. I clenched my fists tightly, my nails digging deep into my palms, the stinging pain keeping me clinging to my last shred of sanity. Looking at Victoria on stage, I suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of unfamiliarity with this woman. She had been the one who pursued me, using every gentle gesture to break down my defenses, making me believe I had moved on from the heartbreak of being dumped by my ex-girlfriend. But now it seemed it was all a meticulously planned scheme. She may have initially been attracted to me simply because of my minor reputation in investment banking, which could help her fledgling company mitigate risks. Once she had gained power, this use and discard pawn, naturally became an eyesore and a stumbling block. However, even more humiliating things were yet to come. Victoria, arm in arm with Blake, looked down at me and said softly, "Cole, since you're here today, let's make some things clear in front of everyone. Our marriage is dead in all but name, and your presence only suffocates me. Tomorrow morning at 9, at the Civil Affairs Bureau and the law firm, we'll finalize the divorce. I won't shortchange you on your meager share of compensation, on the condition that you stop bothering me." After saying that, she turned her head and, amidst enthusiastic applause and whistles from the audience, stood on tiptoe and kissed Blake's cheek in a very affectionate manner in front of everyone. Clap, clap, clap. A wave of applause erupted around us, harsh and sarcastic. Blake, with a smug look on his face, put his arm around Victoria's waist and defiantly raised his champagne glass at me, as if to declare his complete victory. I stood there, and the people around me automatically stepped back, as if avoiding a plague. No one offered comfort. All their gazes held a mocking schadenfreude. The rage within me raged, burning away my reason, but I didn't rush forward like a shrew, erupting into a tirade. Having experienced my ex-girlfriend's betrayal, I knew long ago that anger was the most useless emotion in this pragmatic society. Instead, I slowly loosened my clenched fists, a chillingly cold smile curving my lips. "Victoria, you will pay the price for your arrogance today. You think you are the queen on high, but you don't know that I can put you on this throne, and I can also pull you down with my own hands," I said coldly to myself. Just then, my phone vibrated in my pocket. An encrypted text message from an unknown number lit up the screen, containing only a few words. "Mr. Cole, the show is just beginning. Ms. Catherine is waiting for you in the penthouse suite. She can help you get back everything that is rightfully yours." Upon seeing this text message, my previously cold heart suddenly skipped a beat. Catherine Howard, this legendary woman who wielded immense power on Wall Street and controlled countless established financial institutions, would actually send someone to contact me? I looked up for one last time at Victoria, radiant on the stage, chatting and laughing with Blake, then turned and walked without hesitation toward the heavy mahogany doors of the banquet hall. I knew that the opportunity one had been waiting for so many years had finally arrived on this cold night. Leaving the bustling Metropolitan Museum of Art, the chilly autumn night wind of Manhattan brushed against my face. I didn't linger at the entrance, but walked directly into a private passageway and swiped a card for the exclusive top-floor elevator. The elevator doors slowly closed behind me, the numbers flashing, finally stopping at the penthouse suite, a symbol of absolute power. Pushing open the heavy double solid wood doors, the spacious and luxurious suite was illuminated only by a floor lamp. A faint scent of cedar filled the air, and outside the floor-to-ceiling windows lay the dazzling night view of New York City, with the neon lights of the Empire State Building shimmering in the distance, like a colossal beast built from money and desire. Catherine Howard sat on a leather sofa, a glass of red wine in her hand. She wore a well-tailored dark business suit, and her long, wavy, silver-gray hair was neatly styled in a bun. Although she was over 50, the years had not left any trace of aging on her. Instead, they had imbued her with an aura of authority and composure that commanded respect. She was a true, invisible female financial tycoon on Wall Street, wielding vast assets capable of influencing several large listed companies. You're here, Cole. Catherine didn't even look up at me, but simply picked up her wine glass and swirled it gently. You're calmer than I expected. I thought that being betrayed and abandoned in public by a woman you've helped to build up would make you lose your temper and cause a scene at the dinner party like a street urchin. I closed the door behind me, walked over to a single sofa opposite her, and sat down without any formalities or restraint. Anger is the most useless emotion. I learned this lesson 6 months ago when my ex-girlfriend betrayed me. Besides, getting angry at an ungrateful wretch would only lower my own standards. Hearing my answer, Catherine finally raised her eyes, her sharp blue eyes scanning me up and down through her elegant gold-rimmed glasses. A meaningful smile curved her lips. Very good. What I admire most is someone like you who can maintain absolute rationality in dire straits. Victoria thought that by belittling you in public, she could completely sever your ties with the Sterling Group, and even try to appease you with a meager compensation. She's too arrogant. So arrogant that she's forgotten who helped her write that business plan that changed the company's fate. She hasn't forgotten. I chuckled self-deprecatingly, my tone icy cold. She just feels that she's already squeezed dry of my usefulness, now that she has Blake Morton, that second-generation tycoon, backing her up. She needs a marriage of convenience with a wealthy and powerful family to solidify her absolute dominance in the group. And I, her former lower-class husband who went through thick and thin with her, have naturally become a stumbling block and stain on her path to higher power. So, are you willing to just be kicked out and watch them elope? Then slink away from Manhattan with the millions of dollars she gave you? Catherine pushed a glass of bourbon whiskey toward me, her tone tinged with a hint of provocation. I picked up my glass and downed the strong liquor in one gulp. The pungent liquid burned down my throat and into my stomach, instantly igniting a cold glint in my eyes. Of course not. Victoria's success today is entirely due to my hard work and resources. If she wants to use a divorce settlement to throw me away like trash, then she'd better be prepared to pay the price. I will not only take back everything I deserve, but I will also personally strip her of her coveted CEO position, letting her taste the bitterness of falling from grace. Haha, well said. Catherine let out a deep, hearty laugh. That's the kind of guts a man should have. Cole, do you think I sent someone to call you here today? Because the Sterling Corporation has been too restless lately. Victoria is secretly pushing forward a multi-billion-dollar acquisition in the energy sector in order to join forces with the Black family. To raise funds, she's not only frantically diluted retail investors' shares, but she's even secretly taken out a huge loan against our foundation. If we just do a little something, we can cut off her cash flow instantly. Upon hearing this, my mind raced. As a professional who had spent years in investment banking, I instantly grasped the key logic. You mean, we can exploit her eagerness to succeed, quietly acquire Sterling Group's core outstanding debt on the open market, and simultaneously short their stock? Smart. Catherine nodded approvingly. You'll be responsible for providing the most critical financial loopholes and blind spots within the Sterling Group. Because only you, my bedmate, truly understand these things. And I'll be responsible for providing a continuous stream of funding and the top legal team on Wall Street. This is a feast of revenge. Cole, I'll give you 5% of the initial stock as a reward, on the condition that I see Victoria kneeling before you, weeping bitterly. 5% is too little. I want 10%. In addition, I want all her private properties to be transferred to my name during the bankruptcy liquidation. I looked into Catherine's eyes without flinching, my tone calm but filled with undeniable ambition. Catherine paused for a moment, then burst into laughter. Good appetite, young man. I knew I hadn't misjudged you. Deal. That very evening, after we finalized the details of our collaboration, my phone vibrated again. This time, it was a message from my private lawyer. Mr. Cole, Ms. Victoria's private lawyer has just sent me an extremely harsh draft divorce agreement. It stipulates that you must be at the law firm by 10 a.m. tomorrow to sign it. Otherwise, she will sue you for long-term lack of financial contribution and suspected commercial espionage, leaving you with nothing. Looking at the words on my phone screen, I let out a cold laugh. Victoria, you really are eager to wipe me out. Too bad. You'll never know that from this moment on. The roles of hunter and prey have been completely reversed. I looked up, meeting Catherine's approving gaze, and gently placed my empty wine glass on the table. Mrs. Catherine, tomorrow's divorce signing ceremony will be the appetizer for this counterattack. I will let her experience firsthand what despair truly means. As I stepped out of the penthouse suite, the night outside was still deep, but in the pre-dawn darkness of Manhattan, a glimmer of decisive brilliance was already faintly visible. The humiliation my ex-girlfriend inflicted on me 6 months ago, and the disgrace Victoria had given me tonight, I would exact back, one by one, in the upcoming business battle, at 9:50 a.m. The next morning, I put on the old suit that had been with me for 3 years and pushed open the large glass door of the top law firm in Manhattan right on time. The moment the receptionist saw me, her face immediately showed undisguised contempt and disdain, as if I were a homeless beggar. I ignored her snobbish gaze and walked straight to the VIP conference room at the back. The moment the door opened, Victoria was sitting elegantly at the end of the rectangular conference table, a cup of black coffee in her hand. Standing beside her was one of the top 10 divorce lawyers in the United States, while Blake Morton sat casually in the chair next to her, toying with a solid gold pen in his hand, a mocking smile on his face. "Cole, you've finally arrived. I thought you were too scared to even leave the house." Blake spoke first, his tone full of condescending mockery. "Hurry up and sign the agreement. Don't waste Victoria's time here. For a parasite like you at the bottom of society, getting a few million in cash is already a blessing from several lifetimes." Victoria didn't even bother to lift her eyelids, and simply said in a cold tone, "Cole, sign it. Let's part amicably. This is the last bit of dignity I can give you. Don't make yourself look bad." Looking at their smug, self-satisfied faces, I wasn't angry. On the contrary, a very amused smile slowly crept onto my lips. I pulled out a chair, sat down opposite them with an air of superiority, and leisurely pulled a debt investigation letter from a top Wall Street auditing firm from my briefcase, gently slapping it on the table. "Sign? Victoria, I think you've got it wrong. The person sitting here today isn't a disillusioned ex-husband here to collect severance pay, but rather the largest creditor of your Sterling Group." The air in the VIP conference room seemed to freeze for a moment. Manhattan sunlight streamed in through the floor-to-ceiling windows, but couldn't dispel the sudden chill that filled the room. Blake's hand, toying with the solid gold pen, froze in midair. He raised an eyebrow, his playful smile fading slightly, a hint of surprise and scrutiny flashing in his eyes. Victoria, seated at the head of the table, put down her black coffee, her delicate brows furrowing tightly. Her eyes, usually cold and arrogant, fell on the document I had slammed on the table. "Cole, what's wrong with you?" Victoria's voice remained cold and condescending, but a hint of inexplicable irritation lingered beneath the surface. "This is the signing ceremony for our divorce papers, not a stage for you to put on a show after you've been through something outside. What creditor? What you're holding is just a piece of forged paper from who knows where. Are you trying to gain sympathy with such despicable means?" Blake scoffed, slamming his gold pen heavily on the table. He leaned back, arms crossed, his tone full of contempt. "That's right, Mr. Garrett. We've already witnessed your ability to live off women at the charity gala. But you're still an adult. Who do you think you can scare with a few scraps of paper? Sterling Corporation is worth hundreds of billions of dollars, with ample liquidity, and its partnership with Morton Capital is rock solid. You're an unemployed bum. Even the money to buy this old suit was given to you by Victoria. What makes you think you can be our creditor? Stop embarrassing yourself here. Just sign the divorce papers, take your millions, and get out of Manhattan. That's more dignified for everyone." Listening to their sarcastic remarks, I didn't even lift an eyelid. I simply and slowly extended my hand, my slender fingers gently resting on the document cover, pushing it forward a few inches across the smooth mahogany table before it came to a steady stop in front of Victoria. "Forged waste paper, Mr. Blake? It seems your understanding of capital market operations is still stuck in the stage of living off family wealth." I raised my eyes, my gaze sharp as a knife as I stared directly at Blake, my tone calm yet carrying an irresistible pressure. "Open your eyes wide and look carefully. This bears the official seals of the New York State Department of Financial Supervision and the Wall Street Joint Audit Office. In the past week alone, to cater to your so-called multi-billion-dollar energy acquisition, the Sterling Group not only pledged large amounts of collateral to multiple trust institutions but also borrowed a large amount of short-term commercial paper through underground leverage. And the ultimate holder of these notes quietly became the asset management institution I represent 3 days ago." Upon hearing the words short-term commercial paper and asset management institution, Victoria's previously composed expression finally changed. She abruptly stood up, strode quickly to the table in her high heels, and grabbed the investigation letter. Her gaze swept rapidly over the dense lines of data and legal clauses, her once rosy lips gradually losing their color, and her hand holding the document even began to tremble slightly uncontrollably. This is impossible," Victoria exclaimed, her voice filled with disbelief and terror. "This debt restructuring data is top secret of the company. No one but me and a few key financial executives could possibly have access to it." "How did you know? What have you done?" "Victoria, you should know best what I did." I looked at her coldly, leaning forward slightly, and said, word by word, 6 months ago, in order to get the CEO position at Sterling Corporation, you cried and begged me to help you finalize that crucial asset divestiture plan on the eve of the board meeting. At that time, you swore in my arms that you would never betray me. But what happened after that? After you became powerful, you looked down on me, your husband who had suffered alongside you, for not having a dazzling family background. Not only did you have an affair with Blake in private, but you even colluded with your family's board of directors to try to quietly dilute the 3% of founding shares I still held. You thought I was a soft persimmon to be bullied, but you forgot who helped you patch up those complicated financial loopholes one by one. Seeing this, the top lawyer standing to the side broke out in a cold sweat. He quickly leaned close to Victoria's ear and whispered urgently, Ms. Victoria, the situation is dire. If this debt investigation letter is genuine, it means that the other party has quietly acquired all of our soon-to-mature commercial paper through the secondary market. If they announce a run on the bank tomorrow, our multi-billion-dollar energy acquisition will instantly suffer a cash flow crisis. And it could even trigger a chain reaction, causing the entire group's stock price to collapse. Blake's face turned extremely grim upon hearing this. He abruptly turned to Victoria, his tone accusatory and agitated. Victoria, what exactly happened? Didn't you assure me that the company's internal equity and debt structure was absolutely unbreakable? How could this good-for-nothing possibly have such power to acquire your group's enormous debt? Victoria was now panicked. The strong, independent woman image she had painstakingly cultivated for the past 6 months had suddenly cracked. She looked at me, her eyes devoid of the cold arrogance of the previous night's charity gala, replaced by deep suspicion and confusion. She took a deep breath, trying to regain her composure, and said in a slightly hoarse voice, "Cole, let's talk this out. We've been husband and wife. Why are you being so cruel? Isn't it just that the compensation from back then wasn't enough? Name your price. If you hand over these debts, I'll give you 20 million. No, 50 million US dollars. Enough for you to buy a large estate anywhere in America and live a life of comfort for the rest of your days." Watching her try to bribe me, I couldn't help but scoff. $20 million? In the eyes of true Wall Street tycoons, that's nothing but a drop in the ocean. And Victoria, even now, remains arrogantly convinced that everything can be measured by money, assuming everyone is as greedy as she is. $50 million? Victoria, you underestimate me far too much. I slowly stood up, looking down at her condescendingly. Do you think I went to all this trouble to set up this scheme just to ask you for a few tens of millions of dollars in charity? What I want is for you to watch the throne you painstakingly climbed on to crumble bit by bit. I want you to taste the despair I felt when you and your family trampled me underfoot. You're insane. You're a lunatic. Victoria finally lost all control, screaming as she slammed the documents in her hand to the ground. What good do you think it would do you to bring down the Sterling Group? I'm a major shareholder too. At worst, we'll all go down together. A fight to the death? Victoria, you overestimate yourself. Do you even deserve it? I coldly interrupted her, straightening the collar of my old suit, my tone utterly contemptuous. You and young Master Blake can sit here and discuss how to fill this multi-billion-dollar debt hole. Oh, by the way, just a heads up. Sterling Corporation will be holding an extraordinary board meeting tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. As a creditor holding the company's core debt and some preferred stock, I have received a formal invitation to the board meeting. See you there. After saying that, I didn't look at the two pale-faced men and women who looked like stray dogs again. I turned around, strode forward, opened the conference room door with great flair, and walked out without looking back. Behind me came Victoria's furious roar and the sound of shattering glass. But I knew this was merely the prelude to this storm of revenge. Back in the car, I pulled out my phone and dialed Catherine's encrypted number. The call connected quickly, and Catherine's elegant and composed voice came through. "Cole, it seems you played the first move brilliantly. That arrogant woman, Victoria, should be tasting the bitter fruit of her own actions by now. Shouldn't she? Madam, the fish has taken the bait." I looked out the window at the bustling Manhattan street scene, my eyes gleaming with confidence. At tomorrow morning's emergency board meeting, I will show them what true capital dominance looks like. After hanging up the phone, I leaned back in the passenger seat and let out a long sigh. The gloom that had been building up in my heart for the past 6 months was swept away in that moment. I had finally reclaimed control of my destiny from being a stay-at-home husband who had been hiding behind the scenes and being trampled on by others. 3 days have passed since that tense standoff at the law firm. In those 3 days, Manhattan's financial circles appeared calm on the surface, but undercurrents were surging. Victoria attempted to suppress news of the debt through various channels, even leveraging her family's connections on Wall Street to negotiate with various trust institutions, trying to postpone the debt maturity date of the multi-billion-dollar energy acquisition. However, she underestimated the capital network controlled by Catherine, and also underestimated the cards I had secretly gathered over the past few months. All the wealthy families that tried to lend her a hand, faced with the invisible pressure from established Wall Street capital, tacitly chose to remain on the sidelines. That afternoon, I was sitting in a booth at a high-end private club in Manhattan, across from Robert, the senior vice president in charge of financial auditing at the Sterling Group. Robert was a shrewd and capable American man in his 50s who had worked for the Sterling Corporation for nearly 20 years. In the past, Victoria, in her pursuit of absolute power, had marginalized old-school executives like him, even publicly humiliating him on several occasions at board meetings. Now, Robert held a warm cup of black coffee, his eyes filled with complex emotions and awe as he looked at me. He never imagined that the once silent stay-at-home husband at headquarters, always serving Victoria tea and water, could transform in just a few days into a behind-the-scenes tycoon controlling the company's fate. "Mr. Cole, here is the latest internal financial statement you requested." Robert lowered his voice and pushed an encrypted USB drive in front of me, his tone tinged with a hint of flattery. As you predicted, to cover the financial hole in the acquisition, Victoria not only misappropriated the company's R&D reserves but also mortgaged the headquarters building twice. She's now in a bind. At tomorrow morning's extraordinary board meeting, she originally intended to take the opportunity to pass a resolution to issue new shares, completely diluting the interests of other minority shareholders to protect herself. I picked up the USB drive, twirled it lightly between my fingers, and a cold smile curled at the corner of my lips. She's got a good idea. Too bad. She's put all her eggs in one basket with the Black family's empty promise, forgetting that the ice beneath her feet has already cracked. Robert, at tomorrow's board meeting, this financial statement will be the straw that breaks the camel's back. If you do as I say, the position of CFO of the Sterling Group will be yours after this is done. Upon hearing this, a glint of greed and ambition flashed in Robert's eyes. He swallowed hard and pledged his loyalty without hesitation. Mr. Cole, rest assured, I've had enough of Victoria's autocratic rule in the company. For the long-term development of the group, I will definitely expose her illegal operations at the board meeting and fully cooperate with your restructuring plan. After seeing Robert off, I sat alone in the booth, looking out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the gradually darkening sky. Looking back 6 months ago, when I was betrayed by my ex-girlfriend, I was plunged into extreme self-doubt and pain. At that time, Victoria shone into my life like a ray of light. Her meticulous tenderness and shared pursuit of our careers helped me recover. I thought it was divine compensation, and to help her secure her position as CEO of the Sterling Group, I abandoned my own career plans, willingly working behind the scenes to handle her tedious and complex business negotiations and risk assessments. But I never imagined that after she climbed to the pinnacle of power by stepping on my shoulders, our so-called marital bond would instantly become worthless, trampled upon. She not only secretly conspired with Blake, but also publicly humiliated me at a charity gala, trying to discard me like trash. Victoria, you've enjoyed 7 years of the meteoric rise I paved for you. Now it's time to pay it back with interest. I picked up the strong liquor on the table and downed it in one gulp. Just then, my phone vibrated. It was a text message from the bank, indicating that a large sum of money had been successfully transferred to my offshore account. Immediately afterward, Catherine called. Cole, everything is ready according to plan. Catherine's calm and confident voice came from the other end of the phone. The major short-selling firms on Wall Street are all in place. As soon as the board meeting opens tomorrow, we will immediately release the negative news of Sterling Group's debt default. At that time, their stock price will plummet. Thank you for your hard work, madam, I replied calmly. Tomorrow's board meeting will not only be Victoria's Waterloo, but also a humiliating defeat for the entire Morton capital in the New York financial world. Hasn't Blake always thought his family was superior? I will make him watch his billions of dollars of investment go down the drain. After hanging up the phone, I stood up, straightened my suit and tie, and my eyes revealed an unprecedented sharpness. In these 3 days, I not only achieved absolute control of the core debt, but also, through Catherine's connections, quietly contacted several veteran directors on the Sterling Group's board of directors. These old guys had long been dissatisfied with Victoria's autocratic and nepotistic style, but had been struggling to find suitable leverage or a replacement. My appearance, with its abundant funds and perfect restructuring plan, naturally became their best choice to overthrow Victoria's rule. Night had completely enveloped Manhattan, the neon lights between the skyscrapers flashing dazzlingly. This city never believed in tears, only worshipped the victors. Victoria thought she was a queen who controlled everything, but she didn't know that in the face of true capital games, she was nothing more than a pawn that could be discarded at any time. At 8:50 a.m. the next morning, I drove my Rolls-Royce Phantom and slowly pulled up in front of the Sterling Group headquarters building. The morning sunlight streamed onto the imposing glass curtain wall, refracting a blinding glare. People bustled in front of the building, countless white-collar workers in suits hurrying past. I opened the car door and stepped out. Today, I had specially changed into an expensive, custom-made high-end suit. My usual down-on-my-luck, submissive stay-at-home husband demeanor was completely gone, replaced by the aura of a seasoned, decisive, and powerful top capitalist. The moment I stepped into the lobby, the receptionist instinctively looked up. When she saw my face, she froze, her mouth agape, her eyes filled with shock and disbelief. She simply couldn't reconcile the powerful man before her with the poor ex-husband she had publicly humiliated at the charity gala just days before. I ignored her terrified look and headed straight for the private elevator. The elevator went up to the top floor, directly to the boardroom. I knew that my grand revenge drama would officially begin in a few minutes, but the proud Victoria could never have imagined the devastating storm that awaited her the moment she pushed open the boardroom door. Outside the boardroom on the top floor of the Sterling Group headquarters, the heavy, soundproof double doors were tightly shut. The corridor was carpeted with thick, handmade wool, making no sound underfoot. The air was filled with the bitter aroma of premium coffee beans and a sense of impending doom. Several senior public relations managers were pacing anxiously outside. When they saw me step out of the private elevator, they all froze, their faces showing a mixture of utter astonishment and disbelief. In their eyes, I, the so-called ex-husband, should have signed the divorce papers yesterday, leaving with nothing, and slunk away from Manhattan. But now, I not only stand confidently in front of the boardroom, but the cold, imposing aura I exude is even more suffocating than the usually aloof Victoria. I ignored the stares and walked straight to the front door. My personal assistant immediately stepped forward and pushed open the heavy mahogany door for me. The long mahogany table in the conference room was filled with the core directors of the Sterling Group. Victoria sat at the head of the table. She wore a sharp white haute couture suit, and her exquisite makeup couldn't conceal the weariness in her eyes. Clearly, the debt crisis and public pressure of the past few days had left her overwhelmed. Beside her, in a guest seat, sat Blake Morton, a nonchalant smirk on his face, seemingly confident of victory at the board meeting. "Cole, what are you doing here?" The moment Victoria saw me, she jumped up from her chair, her delicate brows furrowing tightly, her beautiful face filled with shock and disbelief. "This is the group's core boardroom, all unauthorized personnel. Get out immediately. Where's security? How could they let someone like this in?" At Victoria's shout, several uniformed security personnel rushed in from outside the door, quickly surrounded me, and reached out to grab my arms. "Wait." I didn't even lift my eyelids, just coldly uttered 2 words, and took half a step back at the same time. His personal assistant immediately stepped forward and slammed a thick stack of official documents onto the conference table with a resounding thud. The assistant surveyed the room and said in a cold, standard business tone, "Please take a good look, everyone. This is Mr. Cole Garrett, who is also the largest creditor currently holding 51% of Sterling Corporation's publicly traded debt and senior claims. According to corporate law and bankruptcy reorganization regulations, Mr. Garrett is not only qualified to attend this board meeting, but also possesses veto power over all major company decisions." These words instantly caused an uproar in the previously quiet meeting room. The board members present gasped, and whispers arose one after another. Several veteran board members, who had long been dissatisfied with Victoria's autocratic style, exchanged meaningful glances, their faces revealing gloating smiles. Blake's smile froze instantly. He slammed down his water glass, stood up abruptly, and pointed at me, yelling, "Bullshit! What 51% debt? What nonsense are you spouting? Victoria, this is absolutely a scam. This kid was a good-for-nothing living off your charity just a few days ago. How could he suddenly become the company's largest creditor? It's definitely forged documents. Call the police and arrest him." Victoria's face was deathly pale. She stared intently at the debt confirmation letter stamped with the red seal of the New York State Department of Financial Services on the table, her hands trembling violently. As a decisive CEO, she knew better than anyone what this document meant. 51% debt meant that, if she wanted, she could apply for forced bankruptcy liquidation of the Sterling Group at any time, or directly initiate debt restructuring proceedings, removing her as CEO on the spot. "Blake, shut up." Victoria's voice was hoarse as she interrupted her lover's roar. She slowly raised her head, and her eyes, once filled with pride and contempt, now revealed a hint of panic and pleading. She looked at me, her voice trembling, and said, "Cole, what exactly do you want? Didn't we already talk about this at the law firm a few days ago? If you're not satisfied with the compensation, we can discuss it further. There's no need to drag the whole company into this. It won't do you any good." Hearing her still trying to brush me off with negotiating terms and offering compensation, I couldn't help but sneer. I pulled out the chair next to the main seat facing her, sat down with a haughty air, crossed my hands on my knees, and glared at her with eyes as sharp as knives. "Victoria, haven't you figured out the situation yet?" I said coldly, my voice not loud, but clearly reaching everyone present. "At the charity gala, in front of all the Manhattan elites, you belittled me to nothing, and publicly flaunted your relationship with this utterly clueless second-generation tycoon, forcing me to sign a humiliating divorce agreement. Didn't you ever think this day would come? Did you think that just because I've been a full-time husband for 7 years, I'm really a useless piece of trash to be slaughtered, to cater to the Black family's multi-billion-dollar energy acquisition? You embezzled the group's R&D reserves and even forged asset appraisal reports. Vice President Robert has just handed me all the evidence of these violations." Robert, sitting in the corner, immediately straightened his back upon hearing his name called and looked coldly at Victoria. "Ms. Victoria, as the group's senior vice president, I am responsible to the shareholders. Your personal decisions have seriously damaged the company's interests. According to the company's articles of association, I second Mr. Garrett's motion." "Robert, you traitorous old bastard!" Blake rushed over in a fit of rage, raising his hand to strike, but was immediately pinned against the wall by 2 capable bodyguards and unable to move. To resort to violence in the boardroom. It seems the Morton family's upbringing is nothing special. I didn't even glance at Blake. Turning to the stunned board members around me, my tone calm yet carrying undeniable authority. Distinguished directors, the Sterling Corporation is currently facing the risk of a debt collapse amounting to hundreds of billions. Victoria has completely lost her eligibility to continue serving as CEO due to her moral depravity and serious illegal and irregular operations. Now, in the name of the largest creditor and the second largest shareholder, I formally propose the removal of Victoria Sterling from all her positions and the immediate takeover and financial restructuring of the company. The veteran directors exchanged glances, and without the slightest hesitation, raised their hands in unison. I agree to the removal. Seconded. Agreed. Within just a few seconds, more than 80% of the directors voted on the spot to pass the resolution to remove him from office. Victoria slumped into a chair, her eyes vacant as she stared at the indifferent faces around her. Her business empire, painstakingly built over years, had been utterly stripped away in less than half an hour by the very stay-at-home husband she had once despised. Her pride and dignity shattered in that instant. I stood up, looking down at Victoria, whose face was ashen, and said coldly, "Victoria, this is just interest. Tomorrow morning, I will formally sue you for embezzlement and commercial fraud. Everything that belongs to me, you must return with interest." After saying that, I didn't linger for even half a second. Amidst the awe-inspiring gazes of everyone present, I turned and walked out of the conference room. The dramatic removal of the Sterling Group's board of directors was like a powerful depth charge, detonating within hours throughout Wall Street's financial world. Headlines across major financial media outlets were instantly flooded with news of the once glamorous business tycoon Victoria's immediate dismissal, while her ex-husband, Cole, once ridiculed for living off his wife, unexpectedly took over the company as its largest creditor and a mysterious major shareholder. This dramatic reversal left countless celebrities and political figures utterly astonished. That afternoon, the atmosphere in a top-tier private cigar club in Manhattan's financial district was oppressively suffocating. I sat on the leather sofa, a glass of very old Scotch whiskey in my hand, calmly watching Blake Morton, who sat opposite me, his face ashen. Blake was a far cry from the arrogant, haughty tycoon air he had displayed just days before at the charity gala and in the law firm. His hair was disheveled, his expensive custom-made suit was wrinkled, his eyes were bloodshot, and he was breathing heavily. Just an hour earlier, Morton Capital's board of directors held an emergency closed-door meeting, because Blake, in his pursuit of Victoria, had recklessly used the family trust to invest in the multi-billion-dollar energy acquisition of the Sterling Group. Hundreds of millions of dollars of the Morton family's funds were directly tied up, even triggering a liquidity crisis in the entire family trust. To mitigate the losses and explain the situation to the major partners on Wall Street, the Morton family patriarch was furious and immediately announced an indefinite freeze on all of Blake's financial authority, effectively removing him from the core management team. Cole, no, Mr. Garrett. It's all a misunderstanding. Blake's usual arrogance was gone. He stretched out his hands, trembling, and said to me almost pleadingly, "Victoria and I, it was just a fling. That woman came to me willingly. She's a gold digger. All she thinks about is power and money. Please, have mercy and spare Morton Capital. Just withdraw the enforcement of that multi-billion-dollar debt. Name your price." Seeing this once arrogant second-generation Chable kneeling before me like a stray dog, I couldn't help but let out a contemptuous sneer. "Young Master Blake, now you know how to beg for mercy? Weren't you so arrogant when you publicly humiliated me at the charity gala? When you slammed your fist on the table in the law firm telling me to get out of Manhattan? Didn't you think you had it all figured out?" I slowly put down my wine glass, my gaze sweeping across his face like a knife. "The business world is like a battlefield. Since you chose to trample on others with schemes and betrayals, you should be prepared to be uprooted. The Morton family's current predicament is not my doing. It's your own arrogance that has ruined you." Upon hearing this, Blake's face turned deathly pale, and he slumped onto the sofa, his eyes unfocused. He understood that the Morton family, in order to preserve their overall interests, would never stand up for a deposed heir, and his reputation on Wall Street was utterly ruined. Just then, the club's heavy wooden door was pushed open. Victoria strode in. Gone was her usual aloof, icy CEO demeanor. She wore a slightly thin black trench coat, a few strands of her elegantly styled hair falling loosely around her ears, and her face was deathly pale. Clearly, in the days since the group was completely taken over and creditors were relentlessly pressing for repayment, this once invincible businesswoman had tasted the bitterness of human nature and the despair of a living hell. When she saw me sitting with a distraught Blake, she stopped abruptly, a complex mix of emotions flashing in her eyes: shock, shame, regret, and a profound sense of powerlessness. "Blake, so you're here." Victoria's voice was terribly hoarse, completely devoid of its usual crispness and arrogance. "The company headquarters has been seized, and all the bank accounts have been frozen. The Morton family's lawyer just sent me a letter, unilaterally announcing the cancellation of all our cooperation and even threatening to sue us for fraud. Blake, you promised me you would protect me. What are we going to do now?" Upon hearing this, Blake, who had been slumped on the sofa, jumped up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. His eyes were bloodshot as he pointed at Victoria's nose and cursed. You good for nothing. Useless bastard. If it weren't for helping your sterling group fill the black hole, would I have been fired from the family? And now you dare to play innocent? Get out. Get the hell out of here. After saying that, Blake even raised his hand and slapped Victoria hard across the face right in front of me. Smack. The crisp sound of a slap echoed in the quiet cigar club. Victoria staggered back several steps, 5 bright red finger marks instantly appearing on her pale cheek. She covered her face, staring incredulously at her wealthy lover who had once been so devoted to her and swore eternal love. Only now did she realize that she was nothing more than a disposable plaything in Blake's eyes. The so-called true love in a wealthy family was utterly fragile, less than a piece of waste paper. In the face of real interests and family crises, after hitting him, Blake didn't even dare to look at me again, and stumbled out of the club's gate as if his life depended on it. In the huge private room, only Victoria and I remained. The air was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Victoria slowly straightened up, tears finally welling up and streaming down her pale cheeks. She walked step by step to me, her legs buckling, and she knelt directly on the thick wool carpet before me. Gone was her dignity. Gone was her arrogance. Her voice was a pleading sob. Cole. I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. I was bewitched, blinded by power and money, and betrayed our relationship. For the sake of the 7 years we built together, please, help me. Give me back the sterling group. Or whatever you ask for. I'll do anything if you forgive me. Looking at Victoria kneeling at my feet, sobbing uncontrollably, I felt no pity, no pleasure, only a cold indifference, as if I had seen through the ways of the world. I slowly stood up, looking down at the woman who had once trampled me underfoot, my tone as calm as if I were pronouncing a death sentence. Victoria, do you feel wrong now? Do you regret it? But when you publicly humiliated me at the charity gala and kicked me out of the house like a parasite, did you think about our relationship? When you colluded with Blake behind my back, trying to take everything from me, did you think about today? I paused, looking down at her desperate face, and said, word by word, relationships aren't business. Once betrayal happens, there's never a second chance. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, the court will formally begin hearing your case against you for embezzlement and commercial fraud. Everything that belongs to me will be returned to me by law. And as for the debts you owe, prepare to spend the rest of your life paying them back in prison. After saying that, I didn't look at her again, strode out of the club without looking back. From the private room behind me, I could faintly hear Victoria's heart-wrenching sobs. I knew that their era had come to a complete end, while the business empire I had reclaimed with my own hands was just beginning to see its true dawn. Manhattan welcomed its first snowfall of early winter, enveloping the entire city in a pristine and solemn atmosphere. Sunlight streamed through the clouds onto bustling Wall Street, refracting the glass facades of the skyscrapers into a dazzling golden glow. Today marks the first day since the Sterling Group completed its complete restructuring, and also the day the new board of directors was officially inaugurated. In the past week, the New York State Supreme Court delivered its final verdict in the Victoria case. Convicted of serious embezzlement, financial fraud, and malicious damage to shareholder interests during her tenure, Victoria was sentenced to 8 years in prison. All her personal assets, including her luxury villa and sports cars, were seized by the court to pay off massive debts. The once glamorous and arrogant businesswoman now spends the rest of her life behind the walls of a federal women's prison, dressed in a cold prison uniform. Meanwhile, the once powerful heir to a wealthy family, Black, has not only been completely expelled from the family, but his family business has also suffered a significant drop in value, becoming a laughingstock in New York's high society. As for me, Cole Garrett, with the strong support of Wall Street legend Catherine and the unanimous recommendation of all core directors, I was officially sworn in as the youngest chairman and CEO in the history of the Sterling Group. At 9:30 a.m., I stood in Victoria's luxurious office on the top floor of the group's headquarters. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view overlooking the entirety of Manhattan. With the snow-covered Central Park spread out before me, I wore a high-end, dark gray suit, handcrafted by Seville Rose-Top Tailor, my tie impeccably tailored, exuding an air of composure and authority befitting someone in charge of billions of dollars. The intercom on the desk rang softly, and the secretary's respectful voice came through. Chairman, Mrs. Catherine has arrived and is waiting for you in the VIP room. Please let her in, I said calmly. A short while later, the heavy wooden door was pushed open, and Catherine walked in, wearing an elegant black wool coat. Her sharp blue eyes held undisguised admiration and a smile, and she carried a freshly brewed cup of black coffee. It seems that this office is much more pleasing to the eye now that you're in charge, compared to that arrogant woman from back then. Catherine walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking around, her tone slightly teasing. Cole, in less than a month, you not only acquired the Sterling Group, but also took the opportunity to absorb some of the Morton family's valuable assets in the energy sector. Wall Street is now privately discussing that you are the most ruthless dark horse to emerge in the financial world this year. I walked to the sofa, sat down, poured myself a glass of warm water, and smiled calmly. Madam, you flatter me. If it weren't for your billions of dollars in funding and top-notch legal team at the crucial moment, it wouldn't have been so easy for me to bring down the deeply entrenched Sterling family in such a short time on my own. I will always remember this favor. In the business world, there are no personal relationships, only vision and interests. Catherine took an elegant sip of her coffee, looking at me with deep eyes. I invested in you because you not only have top-notch business talent, but also the composure to remain patient and strike decisively in dire straits. However, Cole, now that the situation is settled, have you thought about what to do next? Sterling Group is just a starting point for you in Manhattan. With your current capital, the entire Wall Street is your real stage. I put down my water glass and gazed through the floor-to-ceiling windows at the distant, undulating skyline of the financial empire. The despair I felt 6 months ago when my ex-girlfriend betrayed me, and the public humiliation I suffered at the charity gala by Victoria not long ago, no longer stirred any emotion within me. Those who had tried to trample me underfoot, those who had abandoned me, had now received their just deserts, and this was merely the beginning of my rebuilding of my business empire. Madam's judgment is certainly correct. I turned my head, meeting Catherine's approving gaze, my tone firm and composed. The integration of the Sterling Group is only the first step. Next, I plan to join forces with several established capital funds to comprehensively develop the technology and new energy industry chain on the east coast of North America. Since we're going to sit in this position, we must take control of the rules. Upon hearing this, Catherine's face lit up with a radiant smile. She raised her coffee cup and clinked it against mine across the room. Excellent. Young people should have this kind of ambition to conquer the world. Cole, I'm eagerly awaiting the next wave of this capital storm. After seeing Catherine off, I stood alone again in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. The office door was ajar. The secretary knocked and came in, holding a newly delivered email. Chairman, this is a letter forwarded to you from the federal prison. The sender is Victoria Sterling. Hearing the name, I paused slightly. I turned around and looked at the opened envelope on the table. Inside was only a yellowed sheet of paper with Victoria's once delicate but now somewhat trembling and messy handwriting. Cole, by the time you read this letter, I will have spent countless endless nights behind bars. Only after losing everything did I realize how much effort and sacrifice you silently made to support my business. Blake abandoned me. My family gave up on me. I am deserted by everyone. And I have nothing. I finally tasted the despair you felt when I publicly humiliated you. I know that asking for forgiveness now is futile. I deserve what I got. I only hope that you can occasionally remember the days we endured hardship together. I wish you peace for the rest of your life. Looking at the words on the letter, I felt no pleasure, nor the slightest ripple of emotion. I simply folded the letter and tossed it into the high-end shredder next to me, with a slight mechanical whirring. All the repentance and tears, along with all the grudges and affections of the past 7 years, were completely shredded into fragments and turned into drifting dust. Life's game never judges winners or losers by birth. Those who once trampled on your dignity will eventually bow down before the absolute power you've built with your own hands. I turned around, straightened my suit collar, and strode confidently out of the office. My era has only just begun. And thank you for listening. Please subscribe, like, share, and comment. Thank you.